A hunter stumbles through the dense Maine woods in 1983, 12 years after a teenage girl vanished without a trace. He stops dead in his tracks. There, scattered among the fallen leaves, lies a human skeleton surrounded by women's clothing. His heart races as he realizes what he's found. But when he tries to lead police back to the exact location, he can't. The remains disappear forever, leaving behind only questions that would torment a family for over 5 decades. This is the story of Cathy Marie Moulton, a 16-year-old girl who stepped out of a music store on a crisp September evening in 1971 and walked straight into one of America's longest-running missing person cases. What happened next would reveal a web of deception, cross-border crime, and a conspiracy of silence that continues to this day. September 24th, 1971. Portland, Maine. President Nixon was in the White House, and the Vietnam War dominated the headlines. For the Moulton family, it was supposed to be just another Friday. Cathy Marie Moulton, a bright junior at Deering High School, had plans. The YWCA was hosting their popular 7-Eleven club dance that evening, and 16-year-old Cathy had spent days preparing the perfect outfit. She'd sewn herself a navy blue pantsuit, but there was one problem. Her pantyhose had a run in them. At 1:15 that afternoon, Cathy convinced her father, Lyman Roy Moulton, to drive her into downtown Portland. It was a simple request. She needed new pantyhose, some toothpaste her mother had asked for, and thread to finish hemming her handmade outfit. Her father dropped her off at the corner of Cumberland and Forest Avenue, watching as his eldest daughter walked up the gentle incline toward Congress Street, carrying her favorite brown leather handbag. It was a 16th birthday gift she'd picked out herself that summer. Cathy made her way to the Porteous Mitchell & Braun department store on Congress Street. She bought what she needed, then made one final stop, Starbird Music Store on Forest Avenue, where she wanted to visit a friend before heading home. The conversation was brief and casual. Cathy told her friend she was walking home to shower and get ready for the dance. She'd see everyone there later that evening. But Cathy Marie Moulton never made it home. When dinner time arrived and Cathy's chair remained empty, concern turned to panic. Claire Moulton had one strict rule for her 3 daughters. If you're going to be late for supper, you must call home. Cathy had never broken this rule. Not once. By evening, when she failed to show up at the YWCA dance, her parents knew something was terribly wrong. The Portland Police Department's initial response was devastating in its indifference. In 1971, nearly 200 teenagers had run away from home in Portland alone. To the officers handling the case, Cathy was just another statistic, another rebellious teenager who'd decided to leave home. They couldn't have been more wrong. The Moultons knew their daughter. Cathy wasn't rebellious, she wasn't unhappy. She was a responsible teenager who followed rules, maintained good grades, and had never given her parents reason to worry. She was looking forward to the dance, excited about her new outfit, and had made concrete plans with friends. This wasn't the profile of a runaway, but the damage was done. The crucial first 48 hours, when most missing person cases are solved, slipped away while police treated Cathy's disappearance as a non-priority. Evidence went uncollected. Witnesses weren't interviewed. The trail grew cold before the investigation even began. For over 2 decades, the official story remained unchanged. Cathy Moulton had simply vanished, like she'd been abducted by aliens right there on Forest Avenue. The case file gathered dust while a family's grief deepened with each passing year. If you're finding this story as compelling as we are, and you want to see more deep dives into unsolved mysteries that demand answers, hit that subscribe button now, because what you're about to hear will completely change everything you thought you knew about this case. Then came November 12, 1995. Detective Kevin Cathy, just 6 months into his new position with the Portland Police Department's Detective Bureau, was assigned case number PPD-71-60141. Moulton, Cathy Marie, missing/endangered. What Cathy discovered would shatter the runaway theory forever and reveal a truth far more disturbing than anyone had imagined. Cathy began where the original investigators should have started 24 years earlier. He talked to Cathy's friends, real conversations, deep interviews, and that's when he learned about Lester Everett. Cathy had been seeing an older boyfriend, someone the original investigators never knew existed because they'd never bothered to ask the right questions. Lester Everett wasn't just any older boyfriend, he was trouble. And on September 24, 1971, he was driving a stolen 1963 blue Cadillac. Suddenly, witness accounts that had been ignored for decades began to make sense. Multiple people had seen a teenage girl matching Cathy's description getting into a blue car with two older males on Forest Avenue that Friday evening. But this wasn't a romantic getaway. Detective Katie's investigation revealed something far more ominous. Everett had picked up a Canadian drifter in his 20s named Ronald Reed Purley. Purley needed a ride north to the Tobique First Nation Reserve in New Brunswick, about 300 miles from Portland. What Cathy didn't know when she got into that car was that she was about to become a prisoner. The trail led to Fort Fairfield, Maine, in Aroostook County. A garage employee there reported seeing the trio. His account was chilling. Purley kept his hand on Cathy's neck as he escorted her to and from the bathroom. She looked frightened, controlled. This wasn't a girl on an adventure. This was a girl in danger. From Fort Fairfield, the group traveled to Mars Hill, Maine, where they worked briefly at a potato harvest farm. Multiple witnesses at the farm remembered the teenage girl who went by the name Candy. She cried often she wanted to go home. She seemed terrified of the older men around her. The picture that emerged was of a girl being held against her will, forced to work, prevented from escaping. One night, Everett left the farm with Cathy. He returned alone, claiming he'd dropped her at another camp. But investigators now believe something far more terrible happened. Everett had taken Cathy back across the Canadian border to the Tobique Reserve, where he left her with Ronald Reed Purley. And that's where the trail goes cold. That's where Cathy Marie Moulton disappears into a nightmare that has haunted investigators for over 5 decades. Recent updates from the investigation reveal even more disturbing details. In 2015, a woman came forward claiming she saw a man dragging a crying girl into the woods near the Tobique Reserve in fall 1971. The man was identified locally as Ivan the Rapist, who was Purley's uncle. When investigators later visited Ivan's house, they discovered something suspicious. The basement floor, which had been dirt for decades, was now cemented over. There are stories from the reservation that send chills down your spine. Residents speak of the specter of a white woman roaming the woods at night, knocking on doors, asking for help. A family on the reservation found a human skull on their property. It was assumed to come from the tribal burial ground and was interred there, but that site has since been capped and closed. The skull can never be retrieved. Ronald Reed Purley, the man believed to hold the key to Cathy's fate, has remained silent for over 50 years. Police offered him complete immunity from prosecution if he would reveal what happened to Cathy. He refused. Even when faced with no legal consequences, he chose silence over truth. This tells you everything you need to know about what really happened on that reservation. The investigation revealed that Purley possibly murdered another woman a few years later in Cambridge, Massachusetts, but was never charged with that crime either. This was a dangerous man with a history of violence against women, and Cathy Moulton had been left alone with him in a remote location where no one would hear her scream. If this case is making your blood boil like it's making ours, and you believe that families deserve answers no matter how much time has passed, smash that like button. Because we're not done yet. There's still more to this story that will leave you questioning everything. Investigators believe Cathy died on or near the Tobique Reserve before Thanksgiving 1971, but her body has never been found. No charges have ever been filed. No justice has ever been served. For over 50 years, the Moulton family has lived with questions that eat away at your soul. Where is their daughter? What happened in those final moments? Who is responsible for this crime? Claire Moulton, Cathy's mother, is now in her 90s. She has spent more than half a century wondering about her eldest daughter's fate. In interviews, she maintains hope that someone, somewhere, will finally tell the truth. She believes there are still people alive who know exactly what happened to Cathy. They know where her body is. They've chosen silence over justice, protecting criminals instead of helping a grieving family find peace. The case remains officially open. Detective Paul Murphy with the Portland Police Department continues to follow any leads or new information. But time is running out. Witnesses are aging, suspects are dying. The window for justice grows smaller with each passing year. Then there's that skeleton in the woods near Smyrna, Maine. In 1983, that hunter's discovery could have changed everything. The location was close to Mars Hill, where Cathy had been held on the potato farm. The remains were surrounded by female clothing. The timeline matched. But because the hunter couldn't retrace his steps, those remains vanished back into the forest, taking potential answers with them. This case represents everything wrong with how missing person investigations were handled in the 1970s. If police had taken Cathy's disappearance seriously from day one, if they'd interviewed her friends, if they'd looked for the blue car that multiple witnesses saw, this story might have ended very differently. Instead, their indifference allowed criminals to escape justice and condemned a family to decades of anguish. Today, Cathy would be 69 years old. She never got to graduate from high school, never went to college, never fell in love, got married, or had children. Her life was stolen at 16, and the people responsible have lived free for over 5 decades while her family has served a life sentence of grief and unanswered questions. But here's what gives us hope. Cases like this are being solved every day thanks to new technology, renewed interest, and people who refuse to let the truth stay buried. DNA evidence, cold case units, social media attention. All of these tools can still make a difference in Cathy's case. Someone out there knows what happened. Someone has information that could finally bring closure to this family. Maybe it's you. Maybe you know someone who was in that area in 1971. Maybe you've heard stories passed down through families. Maybe you have information about Lester Everett, Ronald Reed Purley, or Ivan the Rapist. The Portland Police Department is still actively investigating this case. They can be reached at 207-874-8479. Anonymous tips can be submitted by calling 207-874-8584 or texting the keyword PPDME to 8474111. Every piece of information matters. Every tip could be the one that finally brings Cathy home. This is more than just a cold case. This is about a 16-year-old girl who deserves justice. This is about a family that deserves answers. This is about holding people accountable for their crimes, no matter how much time has passed. Cathy Marie Moulton walked out of that music store on Forest Avenue 53 years ago, and she's been waiting for justice ever since. Her story can't end in silence. Her family can't be forgotten. And the people responsible for her disappearance can't be allowed to take their secrets to the grave. If this story moved you, if you believe that every victim deserves justice and every family deserves answers, subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell. Share this video. Spread Cathy's story. Because somewhere out there, someone has the information that could finally solve this case and bring peace to a family that has waited over half a century for the truth. The girl who vanished on Forest Avenue is still out there waiting to be found, and we won't stop telling her story until she finally comes home.